Meanwhile, SAPS experts says the Portfolio Committee on Police failed in its mandate by not probing Mkhwanazi's allegations. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Jacob Mofokeng, who's an independent crime expert. Prof, good to have you on the program this evening. Firstly, what does the Portfolio Committee on Police's failure to act on General Mkhwanazi's March allegations reveal, especially about the current state of parliamentary oversight in South Africa? Do you have any view on this?
Yes, good evening, and good evening to Newzroom Afrika. Well, we have to look at, the role or, the mandate of the Portfolio Committee on Police, which plays a crucial, parliamentary oversight, over the Department of Police, South African Police Service, and several other statutory bodies. We are aware that Commissioner General Mkhwanazi did inform, this Portfolio Committee during March, about corruption as well as interference, within this entity. But it was only after July when, General Mkhwanazi, approached the media and informed the public, about the challenges that are confronting the criminal justice system. So as an oversight, body, it was expected, based on its mandate, to ensure that it has to investigate misconduct as well as ensure accountability, where members of the police, or especially management, who had to be called by that around March, but that did not happen. So that means that the Portfolio Committee was found, on their pants down. And it shows a lack of, proactiveness on their side and initiative. So now later in July, when they had to, initiate ad hoc committee, it was late by that time. So I concur with, General van Rooyen that indeed it really failed, to, bring this accountability to the management of the South African Police Service as well as the minister, because in terms of legislation, it has to also to ensure that, it's tasked to hold the executive and departments accountable. So which means, indeed it has failed.
Yeah. In your expert opinion, what are the broader implications, especially of political interference in policing structures, especially in provinces like KZN?
Look, it has been, a pattern that the ministers that will come, especially on this portfolio of police, then there were several allegations. We talk about, the General Qele, Nathi Mthethwa, in terms of how, certain entities did inform them about certain irregularities, but they did not. So that means that, as much as we will always talk about the trust within the criminal justice system as well as the functionality of the police, if then oversight bodies do not seem to be having teeth, then we will see this kind of, malpractice as well as lack of accountability upon those that are entrusted, with certain roles to be able to, to work and ensure that there is a cohesion within the police as well as within the criminal justice system. So it really put, its role in a bad light to say that maybe then they are not really doing their role. They have to wait for something to happen. We know of what happened in 2021 of unrest, and we blame certain entities that they were not proactive. So it was also here where, it is clear that they were informed ahead of time, but they did nothing. So it means that they undermine, what has already been, done, the damage that has already been done in terms of a lack of trust towards, the South African Police Service.
A lot being said at the Nhlanhla Commission on the disbandment of the political killings task team. How does this then, or rather task team allegedly by Minister Mkhwanazi, this act, affect the SAPS ability to indeed investigate politically sensitive crimes? What do you make of that?
Well, it is something that, we look forward to that, General Mkhwanazi, Masemola, they talked about reforms that has to be seen to be done, so that, despite the directions or the roles of the minister in terms of, Section 206, to be able to come with a policy as well as strategic direction. But, we need all mechanism that, in terms of legislative framework to ensure that any entity that has been, mandated to perform certain roles, they have to do that. But in the absence of effective oversight, we see what has happened now. And then we have to now to depend on the commission where, a lot of money has been spent, of which there's still, skeptical views to say that whether this will be another exercise, to protect those that have overstepped their, boundaries so that they cannot be prosecuted. We're also aware in terms of other entities, we know of the former Chief Justice of how he's now skeptical about certain entities that are supposed to be, investigate criminal, allegations that were, could have been highlighted during the commissions. You know that of General Justice Zondo, about, the hawks as well as the versus the scorpions. But now here we are, with this Matanga Commission, and we hear now of all these allegations. We still wait for the minister to be able to come as well as General Sibia to, to represent. But whatever recommendations, it remains to be seen, at the backdrop of what we are hearing of the lack of effective corrective by the portfolio committee to say that, do we have mechanism where, if recommendations are presented forward, that they will be executed, so that the trust level of the public towards whatever mechanism, entities that have been established, can be seen that they are doing that for the, for the good of the country.
From a public and safety or even governance perspective, what message does this then send? Parliament's delayed response to both law enforcement and the public?
Yeah, well, it shows that as much as, pieces of legislations are there, to ensure accountability for, whatever entities that they're entrusted with, as well as the major performance of these entities. We still, we still need to see, accountability as well as transparency, coming to the fore, that if, portfolio committee, its mandate is to ensure that it promotes accountability and transparency, it really has to come forward to be able to ensure that indeed it promotes public trust. We know that in terms of NDP 2030, we were provided with very good, narratives that promotes that by 2030 we expect certain things. But what we see now, really, it is far from what, the realization or this hope that has been presented to us. So I think, it talks to, we need to see legislative role, as much as performance, accountability, transparency, and engagement with stakeholders, that portfolio committee, working with the minister as well as the president, together with those that are entrusted with leadership within the South African Police Service. But in absence of execution of these duties, then it really put, the public at a very compromised positions because, those that commit certain atrocities, they seemed like they will just get away with whatever that they have done.
Let's explore this theme before we leave. What constitutional or legal boundaries may have been crossed, especially if a minister gave an operational directive, such as disbanding a task team, which should fall under the National Commissioner's role?
Yeah, look, I think it is an absence of effective oversight, because it is clear indication based on the evidence provided to us that he, based on the evidence, based on the allegations, it could mean that there were people that are really pressurizing. And there's also narratives that politicians are funded by people that are underground, underworld, and these are the people that are, will force certain, pressure on those that are, trusted with certain powers as well as mandates. So here, based on what we had, Minister Mkhwanazi really, overstepped. He went to fiddle with operations, the functions that are entrusted with General Masemola to such an extent that, he even created groupies where, General Sibia will no longer report to Masemola, but, to report to him. So when you create functions and or factions, within a particular entity, you undermine the person who has been appointed to offer as a, operational manager in the case of that, of General Masemola. So you create also where junior members will be conflicted in terms of whose instructions that they are supposed to follow. So it is the role of a portfolio committee, to come with that remedies as well as accountability to say, here, Minister, you really overstepped your boundaries.
Thank you so much for your time, Professor Jacob Mofokeng, sharing his time tonight as questions of accountability as well as political interference continue to shape our national discourse.